there are actually lots of people working to do good stuff on the land.
It's a great time to be a fisherman and a hunter.
Part of that is the sheer absolute freedom of being able to go wherever you want.
You can't call yourself a hunter if you're not a conservationist.
This is Hal Herring. I'm in Missoula, Montana, the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous with Anthony Licata, who's the executive editor.
Editorial Director.
Editorial Director of Field and Stream. And what else?
I'm the Editorial Director of what we call the Bonnier Lifestyle Group, and that includes Field and Stream, Outdoor Life, Popular Science, and Saveur. But we're here mostly to talk about Field and Stream and Outdoor Life today.
Yeah, we are. And this is the podcast and blast. We've done a few of these, got a few of them backward, and we're looking forward to doing this one and a bunch more. So so Anthony, you and I have known each other sort of through work and stuff for quite a while, but I've never known how you came to be at Field and Stream, or what was that your early desire?
Well, it was my early desire, but it was seemed so far-fetched to me that I was like being an astronaut. I didn't think I would really do that. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania in a rural area and grew up hunting and fishing. My father taught me to hunt and fish. My older brothers hunted and fished. I had one of those great schools where you closed on the first day of buck season and you closed on the first day of doe season, and everybody did that, and I just grew up in the outdoors and really loved it. And I remember very clearly right before I turned 12 to be able to hunt legally in Pennsylvania, I got subscription as a Christmas present to Field and Stream magazine, first magazine I ever subscribed to. So I've been a Field and Stream reader a long time, and the way it worked out for me, how I ended up there is I studied English literature in college. I always liked to write and read, and figured I should try to find a career out of that if I could, because that was the one thing I liked. And after I graduated, I moved to New York City, where it's kind of the center of publishing.
You bet.
Just looking for any job, to be honest with you. I interviewed at a lot of places, and I got real lucky. I first got a position with a firearms magazine, Harris Publishing. They produce some firearms magazines, and it was I was lucky because I was in New York City and I knew about guns. Right.
A niche market there,
yeah,
for
a
sure.
niche market. They're looking for somebody, with my technical background or being able to edit, but, you know about guns, yeah. So
Right.
I got that position, and I wasn't there very long, and I saw an opening at Field and Stream, and I went for it. And I got a position there, and I've done everything at the magazine over the years. I started at the bottom, and I started when it was just a magazine, not a website and a Facebook page and a YouTube channel and all that.
Just from a writer's perspective, like, what did you cover back then? What did you do?
I covered a lot of the gear stuff. That's a typical thing you kind of give a young editor. They cover the gear. They work with more established writers on evaluating it, but that's a section that I worked on. I edited the fishing column, and I was lucky. I got to work with some real great mentors.
I bet.
Dave Petzel, who's still
Petzel's still one of my heroes.
Yeah, one of mine. He's still producing terrific stuff for Field and Stream. And I got to work with him, work for him, and I'll tell you, he's tough.
I bet he is.
Yeah.
Was he in the office back then?
He was. He was in the office back then. He's not now.
I can't imagine him in the city, really. But, I mean, he's a very, articulate and well-read guy.
Yes,
I know.
absolutely.
But I do imagine him, since I've known him, known his work as being an outlier, out there shooting all the time. And
he did. We always find a way to shoot a lot, no matter where we are. But he's the kind of guy you do a job interview, and he'd say, "Oh, did you study Shakespeare in college?" Yes, yes, I did. What's your favorite play and why?
Yeah,
that'll put you on your back heels. I'm there to talk about guns, and he throws that at you. But that's the kind of guy. He's really smart, really interesting. So I learned a lot from him.
That's cool. Yeah, he reminds me of Colonel Jeff Cooper.
Yes,
who wrote "To Ride,
Absolutely.
Shoot Straight, and Speak the Truth." Petzel's not as hard curmudgeonly as Cooper ended up being.
Well, he's
Is
pretty
he?
curmudgeonly. He's pretty curmudgeonly, yeah.
Yeah, I love that work. I would you had some good raising there.
Yeah,
For
absolutely, absolutely.
And
So-
who was the editor back then?
So Duncan Barnes was the editor.
Okay.
Duncan Barnes hired me, and I worked with him. And just over the years, I did everything with the brand. And I had been there, I guess, maybe 8 years, and I became editor-in-chief. There were the previous editor was Sid Evans, and he left, and there was an opening. And I was pretty young at the time for the job, but I had the background, I had the experience, and I went for it, and I got it, and it's been tremendous.
Wow, that's amazing. It's an icon or a monument kind of.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, I go back. I was staying in these Forest Service cabins on this wilderness snow survey, which I'm writing about with y'all pretty soon. But there was these old field and streams, and I was just lost in them.
Yeah.
It was they predate both of us.
Yeah, right.
I was just lost in them.
I mean, it's over 120 years old, and I was only the 15th editor of the brand. Yeah, and all that time.
People tend to get on that train and keep it.
Yeah, they don't want to get off. That's true.
Right. I know one of the things I picked up another thing. I live on the Rocky Mountain front there, about 90 miles south of Blackfeet Reservation, and I picked up a James Willard Schultz, who was in the Blackfoot tribe, and his piece was in Forest and Stream.
Oh, was it really?
It was this huge Schultz piece about living as a Blackfeet.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was, it was so good.
There's a lot of
and the
great
writing
stuff there.
was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I guess. So to go back to Pennsylvania, did y'all small game hunted? Was there whitetails? And
Yeah, there were whitetails, turkeys, small game. I didn't do a lot of waterfowling. Where I lived, it wasn't great waterfowl hunting.
Same
so
for me.
Yeah, I got to that later in life. But you do what your father does, or whoever mentors you and brings you in.
Right.
So we turkey hunted. My father loved turkey hunting. He's a very good turkey hunter, and hunt whitetails. And we'd go to hunt small game, hunt rabbits, hunt squirrels, and my father, he's a very keen hunter and fish too. I should say that he's a big fisherman, loves to fish for trout. But he taught me that love of the outdoors and the love of hunting and fishing. And I remember going out a lot all the time. But when I think back about it now, we probably didn't that much. My father worked. I'm one of 7 kids. I'm the youngest of 7 kids.
Right.
He had a lot of work to do.
A lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, there's a lot of mouths to feed. And I think back, and those moments meant so much to me. They felt so big. But if I think back about it, we probably didn't go out as much as I think we did, or I remember it.
What it is the power of the times you get gone. I know. I think that's true with my kids too. I grew up mostly hunting and fishing by myself. My parents were all very supportive of it, but my dad was too busy.
Yeah.
And they bought the ammo and they bought the fishing rods. We were talking about I had the first automatic fly reel.
Oh yeah, right.
And so I had this huge experience, but it's mostly alone.
Yeah.
And then my kids have it totally different. And these are like the times that it's very powerful for them when we're elk hunting or deer hunting. That's what they remember it.
It's very powerful. I think back at my memories as a child, and so many of them do involve that hunting and fishing because it really is powerful. It makes a connection, and it pushes you and it teaches you things, and really forms a connection with my father and my brothers when, other times he's busy working.
Right, right. What did y'all do for gear and guns? Did you pass it around, or did you?
Yeah, we passed it around. We had my father for years and years hunted with a surplus Springfield, 30-06. Aught-6. He didn't even have it sporterized. It was still, just as he got it with surplus. And he's been wearing the same Woolrich top and bottoms for over 50 years. He still wears them.
Yeah.
But, we just passed stuff around. I remember, putting on a whole bunch of sweatshirts, cotton sweatshirts. And now I'm like, don't wear cotton. I have all this merino wool, all this good stuff. And we just layer up lots of cotton sweatshirts. And, we pass gear around. And we just made it work,
Mobility wasn't as important as trying to stay warm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a problem even with my 2 kids is like passing gear and rifles.
Yeah.
Because you can't really buy a rifle for every family member when you got
right.
7 of them.
No, that's right.
You're not going to. And fishing gear, and it ends up. it gets hammered, but that's kind of the point, you know.
That's right. That's
mean,
right.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a big tradition. You know?
It is. It is a big tradition. When he finally saw I was into it and he bought me my first rifle, yeah, it was a big deal. It was a real big deal. Obviously, I still have that rifle. I still hunt with it quite a bit, to be honest with you. And it's a Remington Miles 700 and 270, and it just I've been lucky to shoot a lot of guns since then. I like to mix it up. I think a lot of us do.
Yeah.
But I reached for that rifle quite a bit.
You bet. Did it was it scoped?
Yes, it was scoped. It was scoped.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was some debate because before I got that rifle as my own, I used a Savage Model 99 in 300 Savage, and it had a marble peep sight, and so I learned to shoot with that, and that was pretty cool.
Right. Well, yeah, I remember the first scope I ever got was a post.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
right.
and it 1.5. It was basically an aim point.
Yeah, right.
And it worked. I've still got it. It doesn't actually work anymore. But then people put those see-through sights in case it was raining or whatever, and the scope was up so high that you couldn't really get your eye in it.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's a big. Things have come a long way.
They certainly have.
I mean, I'm sure people still use that, but I don't see it much. You know. Well, so when you came to New York, did you continue to go home and hunt, or did you? How does a outdoorsman operate in the confines of the Big Apple?
Yeah, a lot of people ask that question.
Yeah,
I get
I
it
bet.
a lot,
I mean,
and I could see why. I grew up in a real rural place, and New York was a big change for me. It was a big adjustment. But honestly, it's not so bad to still be a sportsman and be in New York. Okay, if you're in New York City, some of the gun laws are a pain. They really are, right?
Yeah.
But I don't live in New York City. I work in New York City. I live out in the suburbs.
Yeah.
So there, it's not so bad. But it's 3-hour drive from New York City to my home in Pennsylvania, where I was from, where I grew up. And so we had a deer camp there. I have a deer camp out in western New York. I also go quite a bit up to the Catskills. That's great hunting and fishing up there. I go to the upper Delaware to fly fish. No, the Delaware's a terrific river. The lower reaches are awesome for smallmouth. Do a lot of smallmouth floats down a little lower. The upper Delaware, the east and west branch, they're tailwaters trout. There's smallmouth there too, but all wild trout, big browns, rainbows.
Wow.
It's a great fishery.
Yeah.
And that's about an hour and a half. It's not so bad. Jump in the car and go.
Yeah.
And then even closer in New York City, I've really gotten into striper fishing.
I bet. I was going to ask you about this because I had read some story about it, and I was just like, holy smokes, that's right in the world.
Yeah.
It's a measure of, and I don't want to get on the conservation beat or nothing yet, but it's a measure of how bad we've cleaned stuff up, how well we've done it.
Absolutely.
That you can do that.
You catch this tremendous game fish right in New York Harbor.
Right in New York
you
Harbor,
could be looking at the Statue of Liberty or the UN, catching stripers.
How's that
tremendous.
done? Are you chunking swim baits or live lining? Or?
Well, you could do much. Yeah, you could do bunker. We could do live line bunker. You could do chunks of bunker. Stripers are so great. They're real aggressive fish, and they hit a lot of plugs real well too. What I've gotten into the last year or so is kayak fishing for them. We've got a couple of serious kayak fishermen on the staff, and they turned me on to it. And, last fall we're out there off of Brooklyn, basically, off of Brooklyn, right into the ocean. This is not in the bay. This is out in the ocean. And there's these big pods of bunker. The water's just absolutely purple with it. And there's stripers darting underneath, and you hook one, and you're hooked up in a striper, and you're in this kayak. It's towing you around. Then you look, 30 yards away, here comes a humpback whale up.
Wow.
Just breaching right there. And birds, and it's just all this rich marine life right there. And then you turn and look, and the city's right there.
You bet.
You're looking in Brooklyn.
You bet.
It's pretty cool. And stripers are just a tremendous game fish.
Yeah, I bet. And I've never really done that. I lived at Hatteras as a very young guy. And stripers actually had not come back then.
Right.
This was in the late 80s. And they weren't there. And later on, they showed up. You know?
Right.
So I've always been envious of that fishery there.
Yeah, it's a tremendous fishery.
It's something that I learned living in New Orleans when I was in college in the 80s. And that in the city and with like New Orleans is in the marshes, the nature is naturing all around you.
Yeah, that's right.
And I mean, it's still really happening, right there. If there's some taking care of it, but even in general, there's just like you think of those. There's got to be sharks move up that river into New York.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the world is going on right there in the midst of what we think we think we're running the show. And it's just like, it's pretty cool, man. I've always been fascinated by that. I read a Russell Chatham story when I was really young. He's the artist in Livingston
absolutely.
here.
Yep.
He kind of pioneered this striper fishing in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, that's a great fishery too. It's a little underrated.
Yeah, and he was talking about how he kept it really secret.
Yeah.
And he would go down there at night, and through all the shady collapsed piers and stuff.
Striper fishermen are weird, man.
He was obsessed.
Yeah, you get obsessed, and a lot of times the best fishing is at night. Yeah. It's all about the tides and then the darkness and at night. So, you're fishing from the beach, and there's great access from some of these towns in Long Island. Yeah. And, some of the towns aren't all that great.
Right.
They're a little rough.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about, right?
Yeah, but you drive up into this, park in a rough town on the beach, at 2 in the morning. You sleep in your car for a little while. You get out. You go in the dark and fish the beach. Yeah. Striper fishermen are a weird bunch in the best way.
Yeah. Obsession is a wonderful thing when it's applied to the outdoors.
Absolutely.
One of the things is you learn. I mean, it's like an apprenticeship to a place.
Yeah, that's right.
So are y'all spin fishing or throwing bait casting gear?
Either spin fishing or sometimes conventional tackle, level lines and stuff.
Yeah. With 17 pound?
Or even heavier sometimes. Yeah. I don't fly fish for stripers. I love to fly fish, and but mostly for trout, and I've done it for bonefish in the salt water. But some people do that too. But it's hard enough as it is.
I bet. Right. Yeah. Since my kids have been. I don't know. Ever since I've had them, my sphere of I don't travel the world fishing. I fish and hunt a lot local,
right?
But Andros and all that stuff is kind of waiting.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking so for people who read Field and Stream and when you're doing all of this, do you hunt? Do you still get to hunt in the fall? Do you get out?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I get to hunt quite a bit. I hunt and fish quite a bit, and it comes in a couple of forms. One, I'm lucky through this job that I get to travel to some interesting places with some interesting people and do some great hunts. I mean, in the last year I've been in New Zealand, did a red stag hunt in New Zealand, which is pretty neat. And I get to go to some great places and write stories about it, and it's a part of the job, and that's good. But to me, what is just as important is taking the time to go and hunt on my own, like a regular person.
Right.
I go back to Pennsylvania. I hunt our camp. I hang my stands. I put out my cameras. I just go and I hunt when I can, and I do a lot of that because I just number one, it's just fun.
It is, and it's also you don't have to listen to anybody else.
Yeah, I'm listening to somebody else. I'm not working. I mean, hey, I'm not complaining. It's a great job to be able to travel somewhere cool and hunt and write a story about it. That's terrific. But it's still work, and it's nice to go and do my own thing with my brothers or my family or my nephews and nieces, and that's just real special to me. And I think it's really important, too, for doing what you and I do, Hal, is, when we're writing about this, when we're covering things, you got to get out and see different things, but you have to experience it the way everyone does, and to keep that perspective.
Right.
I know some people who work in this field, in this industry, and all they do is kind of work trips or industry hunts, and I feel like you kind of lose a little perspective when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm still, man, a devoted bait slinger for catfish on the Missouri River.
Yeah, that's good, clean fun.
We were up west of my house one time, and these people were fishing these. They were night crawlers with no weights. And live lining them down this little SEMA current.
Oh, yeah.
And there was these brook trout in there, which I didn't really even know were there. It's a rainbow fishery.
Mm-hmm.
And he blowed up on one, and I was like, my son was like, We went back there, and we were back to worm fishing.
Yeah,
with,
right.
with a little circle hook because that's what
right.
was working.
That's right.
I have no purist tendencies.
No, I don't either. I love to fly fish. I like to bow hunt. I shoot a traditional bow sometimes. I don't always hunt with it because I don't get to practice enough. But I am not a purist at all. I'm an equal opportunity person.
Right.
Like more, as far as I'm concerned, like the more you know how to do and the more kind of stuff you do, the more fun you have.
Right. That's right.
You
And
know?
I used to be totally obsessed with like catching fish, and so
Yeah.
you couldn't be a purist.
No, right. That's right.
You'd see these sharks go across, especially at Hatteras. You see these sharks go across the bar.
Uh-huh.
I was absolutely obsessed. There had to be some way to slow them down enough to get them to eat a bait, you know. So I was out there. I'd swim out there and I'd drop it, and then it's not that deep, you know.
Yeah.
And you'd back up and
Right.
wait, and it never worked.
Never works, right?
It never worked. I mean, so I was. So have you hunted in the West?
Oh, I have. Yeah, I've hunted many times in the West. I've done hunted quite a bit for mule deer and for elk. I've hunted in Montana, Colorado, Idaho. I've hunted in South Dakota. I've hunted in Arizona.
What was South Dakota like?
South Dakota was cool. I did just last fall. I killed a real nice mule deer there.
Is that Black Hills or
Yes,
Prairie?
it was.
Yeah.
It was Black Hills, and
Cool.
it was it was a real cool deal. It was a great old buck. Killed him last fall, and he was real heavy, big, old deer. You know,
Wow.
he was big, real wide, but he was a 3x3, but real wide and heavy. But he was also just old. He was all gray around the nose. Only kind of had that like sway back. You could tell he probably was on his way down with his rack.
Right.
And the rut was terrific. It was. I was lucky in my timing. It doesn't normally work out this way. Apparently, like the day before I was there, it had been 67 or 70, and it had been that way for a week. But when I got there, temperatures got cold. And
dropped off the
they
cliff.
dropped off, yeah. So I do a fair amount of hunting in the West. I really, really do enjoy it.
Yeah. So you, I was going to ask you. I hadn't seen you at Backcountry Hunters. Is this your first trip to meet these folks?
Well, I've worked with these folks on some different projects before. I know land, and I've been paying a lot of attention to this group because I think they're doing really great work, and they're talking about an issue that is just critical right now. And I've been a big supporter. This is the first time I've come to the Rendezvous, though. And man, it's a lot of fun.
Yep, you bet.
They have a lot of great events here, and there's big crowds, and the Brew Fest. I just judged a wild game cook-off. Let me tell you, that was pretty good.
I bet, yeah.
That was real good. But I'm just really impressed with this group and the people who are here.
I've enjoyed it. There's a lot of gear to kind of slaver over.
Yeah, that's true, too.
But I've known some of these people. I guess I'm getting old, but I've known them when they were much younger, you know, and they're just like it's one of the hardest core group of hunters. I mean, the amount of experience that you can, the talking that people, the stories that people tell and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like spellbound sometimes.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Another thing that I've noticed here with this group is it's pretty young.
It's young compared to anything else.
Compared to a lot of other, conservation groups or whatnot. I mean, it's got a younger vibe and a younger membership, which, hey, I'm nothing against older people. I'm pretty much getting there myself, right?
Right.
I think a lot of these guys are younger than me, but like
you have to wonder who's going to pick up the torch.
In 10 years, you go to some events and you look around and you're like, in 10 years, where are all these people going to be?
That's right.
And it's nice here that you have. There's a lot of younger people, people of all ages, and it's really good.
I had doing all this over the years of conservation reporting, especially about midway through or when I was starting out, I would go to these fish and wildlife associations.
Yeah,
I know they had them in Pennsylvania.
Yep,
they had them in Wisconsin.
Yep.
They had great ones in Montana, and there's some young people, but the average age is really old.
Yeah.
And these guys have fought battles and done fantastic triumphs for fish and game that people just live with the benefit. They don't know what these guys did.
Right.
But they are very old. And that model seems to be going out. They're not repopulating with younger people. And I was at times at one time about probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was really worried about that. I was like, nobody's picking the torch up.
Right.
And I had met Land and them in Louisiana, and this would be Land Tony, and all of a sudden when I came to this, I saw all these hard athletes from around the West, and they were celebrating the hard man ethic and hard woman ethic, because there's some incredible women hunters.
Yeah,
in
absolutely,
this thing.
right.
And my heart picked up. I thought it's not the same thing, but it is definitely a hunter conservationist movement.
It is. It absolutely is. Focusing on access, focusing on ethics, frankly, and conservation, and and kind of doing things the right way, and getting out and trying something new. I loved all the seminars they had here today.
Right.
I thought the subject matter was real broad, from anything from how to make the most use out of your animal to right down here out on the river, how to spay cast.
Yeah. Right. I would have liked to have seen that.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I went out for that one because I can't spay cast.
No, Kirk Dieter tried to show me that, and I really, really looked bad.
Yeah. I once ran a story. Kirk wrote it in the magazine about how to spay cast with this complicated illustration. Man, it was a disaster. It's a much better thing to do on video. So now these days we'll do that on Facebook on video.
I'd YouTube that.
Yeah, exactly. But watching Sam Lundgren, who taught it today, do it, he made it look so effortless, and it's not. But there's a kind of simplicity about it when you do it the right way. And
that's what I saw with
Dieter. He was booming the lines out.
Yeah,
he was booming it out there. And one funny thing is he was doing it, and he's talking about, fishing the fly and the swing and all that. He's talking about that, and all of a sudden, boom, he lifts the rod. He's like, oh, he's hooked up. He's fish on.
Wow.
So he caught a little brown trout just when he was messing around there trying to show us what to do. In downtown Missoula.
Yeah.
So.
I know. I've stood on that bridge up there, and as the water goes down, and watch these fish working right there. It's like on the Higgins Street Bridge, man. Yeah, it's a great. I mean, I go back to this a lot. It's a great time to be a hunter. I wrote a piece for y'all, that State of the Sportsman's America or whatever. It's a great time to be here right now, fishing and hunting. It's amazing.
It's a great time to be a fisherman and a hunter. There's a lot of problems and a lot of things that everybody still talks about, and rightfully so. Loss of habitat and access, and it's important stuff that we need
it doesn't feel assured.
Right.
It feels good, but it feels tenuous.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we should focus on that. We should fight those things and talk about it. But I think sometimes people just think, there's nowhere to go, or I don't have this. And really, we're lucky. Seasons now are real long.
Right.
There's lots of opportunity to get out there. States are trying to do a really good job with mentoring programs and giving lots of opportunities, and certainly has its challenges, but I think it's a really great time to be a sportsman.
Well, one of the things I want to see, and I've been in Montana for about 26 or 7 years. I chose this. I never thought I was going to stay here because I always loved Alabama.
Yeah.
And the fishing there, I mean, every April I have this terrible, overwhelming desire to just get in a truck and drive to Alabama and go crappie fishing and start fishing tail races on the Tennessee River.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I mean, it's never gone away. Or I've never turkey hunted my state I was born in.
That's just great.
That's terrible. Yeah. So, but it. I'm not sure where I was going with this, but I have felt that as in the West, I had more access to public land, so we can go ahead and get on what BHA is really into, and I am as well as anybody who read anything I ever wrote. I'm obsessed with
it.
But the public land stuff here is what brought me here.
Yes, and that's a great reason.
And I shot the first elk that I saw as a legal hunter. I was a ranch manager in the Bitterroot, and the idea that I could just leave that ranch where we wintered some elk in October and walk up those mountains.
Yeah.
And I got one. I didn't get another one for 6 years.
But that's pretty good. You walked out, you went out there, and you got one.
And the whole idea of that, I think I told my son the other day, I said, I think the whole reason, we were watching these bulls in the backcountry, and they come back into the backcountry really early. They're old, they're mature bulls. They leave, they don't want the front country.
Right.
And we were back there, and I said, I think the whole reason that you were born here It's that right there. Those,
Yeah.
those animals.
Right.
It's
That's
like
funny.
built a whole life around it.
Well, that's a good thing to build a life around. I mean, there's a lot of special things about Montana, but certainly the public land, the amount of public land really makes this, and some of the other states out west, absolutely a real special place.
Yeah.
And I told you I've hunted out west quite a bit, but I'm from the east. I grew up in the east as a hunter there. I was lucky. Pennsylvania's got a good public land system.
It does.
Pennsylvania does.
One of the things
That's right. I grew up hunting state game lands.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
gotcha. Yeah, and one of the things I was going to say is, like, as I wandered west over all these years, some of the most really good hunters that were not from here were from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Yes, right. That's right.
There was some kind of deep, steeped, dyed-in-the-wool tradition there,
Yes.
And it carried over when they came to the West.
Yes, I've noticed the same thing on a lot of my travels and hunts. A lot of the best hunters I meet are from those states.
Yeah.
And that was my point. A lot of my friends from back home who don't have the opportunities I have through my job to hunt, they come out west too.
Yep.
And they hunt out here quite a bit. And these guys don't necessarily have a ton of money to be spending on a hunting trip, right? So, but they do it themselves. They spend some money on some tags and licenses, and they draw, and they study where to put in for, and where they can get over the counter tags and all that. But they save the money. They get their tags. They pack up the truck. They have a wall tent.
It's incredible.
They drive out here, and they have a hunt of a lifetime.
Right.
And they do it a lot. If not every year, every other year.
Yep.
And just the ability to do that, I don't think everybody most hunters understand how lucky we are.
I can't imagine it. I mean, if you were to put it in the rest of the world, I mean, it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist. I've hunted in Europe a couple of times and for work, and I mean, everybody says it's a rich man's sport over there, but it is.
Yeah,
it really is.
Because it is.
It really is.
Right.
It's very difficult. And we're so lucky that we have a different system here.
You bet. That's the one thing I see as a founding kind of element of the health of our nation.
Yes.
And you just we have this, and it's like we have and I equate it, and I equate it to like the Bill of Rights and Constitution. Those things are highly unlikely as well.
Right.
Those are the product of like failures in civilization up to the point where the founding fathers got together and said, "Hey, man, we can maybe create something new, a republic if you can keep it."
Yes.
And then over not that much longer, to 1890s, when it seemed to be really not going well, we started doing the forest reserves, and we started setting aside land.
Right.
And then after the Homestead Acts failed, we restored those lands. Those are BLM and Bureau of Rec, and these are founding elements of our country that make it the healthy.
Yes,
it blows my mind, really.
The
unlikeliness of it.
It is. It is very unlikely. It is. It's mind blowing, and people like to talk about American exceptionalism, how we're the greatest and the best. And hey, man, I believe that. I'm an American.
I'm all over that.
I'm all over that. This is the greatest country in the world, and there's a lot of things that make it unique and special, that make the character of what an American is, that kind of striving and go-getting, and that sense of independence and freedom.
Right.
And I think, honestly, that public lands is a part of that.
I do too.
That anybody can go out and to hunt. You want to camp, you want to hike, you want to do anything, you want to get away from it all.
Right.
You want to get lost for a little while. You can do that.
Yep.
We
used to call it going on the drift.
Yeah, right. That's a good name for it.
Say you had some time between work or you're off and stuff, and you just pack up the truck and head in some direction, and you can camp.
Right.
Forever.
Right. Going on the drift. I love that. It's true. And I really think that's a big part of makes up our national DNA or our national personality.
Yeah. It's what I just associate it with a basic precept of liberty.
Yes, right. That's right.
And one of the reasons, and part of that is that, and we've written about this, I know, but this is something that we all hold in common, and makes us more free.
Yes, that's right.
It's I mean, how many? Again, the unlikeliness. How many things are there like that?
Yeah.
So I know that. So you scored that interview with President Trump on the campaign trail, and he basically was supportive of retaining public lands and public hands.
He was.
And so, explicitly, you think? You think that'll work? I mean, do you think he's hold with that?
I'm hopeful that he
Yeah.
will. Yeah, during that interview, he said everything he said during that interview. You can kind of see, and he came out very clearly and said that he didn't like the idea of transferring federal lands to the states. He said, he said, are the states going to have the money to take care of them?
Right.
Who knows what they'll do? Well, that's what he said.
Right.
He said it.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right.
Exactly. I think he has that understanding. I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions, but I know his sons, Eric and Don Jr., are big hunters.
Sincerely.
Yeah.
Right.
I've met both of them, and they're not just guys who go out once in a while or have done it. They are legitimate hunters. They really love it. They really believe in it, and I think that's helped the president. Maybe get some perspective and understanding of these sports and of wildlife and conservation. Mm-hmm. So I'm hopeful that he'll live up to that. I think who we put in an interior, Zinke is a good sign for that.
I have nothing but good hopes.
He went on record during his confirmation hearing saying he was against the transfer of public lands. So so I'm hopeful for that.
I am too. And one of the long terms, we're going to interview Zinke. We were supposed to a couple weeks ago. But I was asking some folks here, like I don't want to smoke. I don't want a smoke question. It's like, what would you ask the Secretary of Interior?
Mm-hmm.
You're the hardest core public land hunters I've ever known. What's your question?
Yeah, right.
And of course, it's pretty personal for me because I spent a lot of time like in the Missouri breaks and all that BLM land.
Yeah,
right. Our family we go to the mountains in the summer and ski and stuff, but we orient east a lot to the prairie.
Yeah,
the Missouri River, Marais River, and all of it's BLM.
Yeah,
and part of that is the sheer absolute freedom of being able to go wherever you want. And and we do a lot of recreational shooting, and we just do a lot of fishing, and it's just like that. The BLM's our thing.
Yeah, the freedom to go where you want.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mentioned earlier my friends from Pennsylvania. I have another group of friends who they don't come out west, but they go. We go up north to northern Maine to deer hunt, and it's not. It's open to public hunting. It's like paper company land, right?
You bet.
But they have great access. And the funny thing is, we have much better deer hunting at home.
Yeah, I bet.
Like all these guys who can walk out there. Most of them can literally walk out their back door and have really good deer hunting and get into big whitetails. But every year we take a week and drive all the way up to Maine where we see very few deer.
Right.
But the point is, we can go wherever we want.
You bet.
We can roam for miles.
Well,
we drive back in there. We camp. We could, walk.
Bet.
It's awesome.
You bet. I noticed over here that at Sitka Gear they had this giant like fleece. It must have been like 2 inches thick. And I was like, what would you do with that if that's what it was a Maine whitetail coat? Because you got to sit.
Yeah.
And I'll never be a good whitetail hunter because I just can't sit.
Yeah.
But that's what that thing was for.
That's
funny.
Like,
that's Maine.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's freezing cold.
It's cold.
And you got to sit. Well, do you feel like what? And you might not even have an opinion on this, but I'm interested in like from your point of view up there at these oldest conservation and hunting and fishing magazine in the United States. Like, do you see a state of American conservation through the sportsman's eyes? I mean, what do you think it looks like? I ain't trying to trick you up because that's a tall order.
No, it is. It's a tough question, and I don't have all the answers to that, but there's some things that I've noticed and seen, and where I think where we're at now, talking about sportsmen and conservation, is it kind of reflects where the broader society is right now. I feel like I'm not going out on a limb to say America is very kind of divided and partisan.
It seems like yeah.
There's not a lot of middle of the road.
Right.
You're one or the other. You believe this stuff or you believe that stuff.
Right.
And I think that sometimes puts sportsmen in a tough spot because our issues, from gun rights, which are so critical, to conservation, protecting access to lands, pollution issues like that can those issues can fall all over the spectrum.
That's right.
And depending on politicians and parties and what states they represent and what kind of corporate interests they have, it's not so clear cut, of how what politicians believe and what they access there. But I feel like there's such polarization in this country that sometimes people aren't looking at the issues and really understanding what it is. It's not that people are, too dumb or whatnot. It's just they're not at all. They're complicated issues. They're really complicated.
And people are busy.
They're busy, right? And frankly, also sometimes like news is a bummer. You know what I mean?
Right.
If it seems too overwhelming, it's like, oh man, I don't want to hear about that. And so I think people sometimes don't understand the issues the way we would all like to.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that too.
Everybody is.
Everybody is. And when you don't, then you have a tendency to kind of fall back on just following the party line.
Right.
You
I'll tell you what I think.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Like that, it's like great in the bar.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work so well in the wider world. We were talking at supper. That gal had all of those fish screens on the irrigation projects in Idaho.
Right.
And it was basically, I know a little bit about it. It's basically responsible for all those fish there's a fishery there now because they're not being drained out into the irrigation ditches. Right. And somebody had to do that.
Somebody did that. Exactly.
And they did it. And one of the things I commented to you is like, I think a lot of people who are like, they would say anti-environmentalists, or they're very conservative or right-wing. They don't know, or very left-wing and don't care.
Right.
They don't know that there are actually lots of people working to do good stuff on the land.
Right.
And then we kind of reap the benefits. I think of like game management. People criticize the Montana FWP.
Right.
I tend to not. I tend to think they're pretty good.
Yeah.
And I really respect them because I know them. And then I go out and I get 2 cow tags. I mean, what am I complaining about?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But somebody has to do that.
Somebody has to do that. It's true. I've been lucky, first of all, to meet so many volunteers and people with conservation groups. Regular people who are like me. They got a job. They got kids. They got stuff to do. They find the time to get the boots on the ground and do that sort of stuff, which just always blows me away.
It does me too.
Humbles me. And then, as you said about the Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, hey, I'm like everybody else. It's easy for me to crack jokes about the government.
Yep.
And
throwing rocks and criticizing the government.
and
American
all that.
pastime.
Yeah, right. Sure, I do that just as much as anybody. But then, what I found is these biologists, and game wardens, and state workers. They're great people doing hard work, doing important work, and doing a great job.
Yep.
I mean, you sit from afar and criticize for sure, but then when you really see what they have to do, what resources they have, and how much they care, and how much we all benefit, it's opened my eyes a little bit and sometimes shut me up.
Yeah, I mean, it has me too, and there's no doubt that they used to say, criticizing the man in the arena, the famous
famous TR quote.
And it's those people are in the arena, and there's no applause.
Yeah, none.
I mean, let me tell you that, like for a lot of the guys that work in fisheries stuff, and they work all the time. They're fascinated by it. That's their passion, and they've produced. I mean, we have some of the best fishing that. Like I look at like I was talking about the Tennessee River. Yeah, we're going down there blue cat fishing. We're taking like these 3-pounders for food. Yeah. But on the side of the boat, these white bass and these wipers.
Oh yeah,
and
sure,
this is something that didn't exist when I was little.
Right.
And they're just blowing up everywhere. They're blowing up on bait. And this old guy I was fishing with, I was like, "Where's your casting rod?" Right, because he's only interested in blue cat. That's it. Flatheads if we got live bait, right? Right. But I was like, "Where's your casting rod?" And he was like, "I don't have one. I'm just catfishing, And I'm watching all this. I'm watching smallmouth busting bait in the shallows, and I'm thinking, this is truly that wasn't as good when I was little.
Yeah, right. There's a lot it's gone that way.
Somebody fixed it.
Yeah, somebody fixed it.
And so I just think if we could just keep this ship between the rocks.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's probably going to take more hunters and fishermen then I don't think somebody said something about apathy. But I don't think indifference and thinking it's going to go on and forever without you taking responsibility for it. I don't think that's going to work.
No, it's not. And I talked about this a little earlier today at lunch, but I like to, with the magazines, live up to the ideal of the total outdoorsman. You know. Somebody who's good at everything, or you don't have to be the best at everything, but you're pretty good at stuff. You can camp, you can fish, you can hunt, you can shoot, you can start a fire, you
find
can
your way back to the truck.
You can find your way back to the truck, right?
Yeah.
In this day and age, it's true of hunting and fishing, just like it is a lot of things. People become specialists.
Right.
Oh, I just fly fish, I just bow hunt, I just do whatever.
Right.
Because everybody's so busy, life's complicated these days, all that. But it's just a lot more fun and rewarding if you could do a lot of things. And I think conservation is absolutely part of being a hunter and fisherman like that.
Yeah.
You can't call yourself a hunter if you're not a conservationist, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Same thing with being a fisherman. And it's not just saying, oh, yeah, I'm a conservationist, I buy my license and my excise tax money goes. Yeah, okay, that's great. That is great. But you have to be engaged and involved, join some organizations, volunteer, and you just also – I think just talking about it.
You bet.
Right? Just talking about it with your friends, other people hunt and fish, being aware of the issues and talking about it.
Right.
And not just always talking about, how big of a buck you got was.
Right.
And, it's
or
really
how bad everything is.
Or how bad everything is. Right.
Yeah.
Having kind of a holistic view of realize that, hey, man, we want to do these sports and they mean something to us and they're so important. Well, that's part of it, being a leader and a steward of it.
I know and this is slightly off subject, but the guys who teach hunter ed in my town, and I'm to my shame I haven't done it. I work too much, and I've got kids of my own. I'm teaching them, but my kids both went through it too. Those guys are selfless. And there's one guy in Lewistown. There's a lot of people here know him well. Ron Moody is his name, but he's taught it for like 28, 30 years.
Yeah, and
he's probably had more impact.
Yeah.
Like pure impact.
Right.
You say, here I can have an effect.
Right.
And I love seeing that because I've known some of those kids who became really good hunters.
Yeah.
And they also get conservation.
Yes.
They get it because they're in it. They're living in it.
It's also same goes with adults. And thing that I've noticed, we all like to talk about getting the next generation in and mentoring kids, and that's all great. I've met a lot of adults who want to learn how to hunt and fish.
Yeah.
And these sports are hard to get into if you don't have a mentor, know. If you don't have a way in, there's a kind of high barrier of access. There's, what you have to learn and know. And so over the last few years, I've taken a few adults out who said, oh, I'm kind of, I feed them I feed them a back strap. They come over for dinner. Like, this is pretty good. And they know that I hunt. They look at my mounts. They ask some things. And I'm like, would you like to go sometime? Well, yeah. And I have a couple of them who now have turned into sportsmen, and they're coming to it, they love the food aspect of it. We all do, but they love feeding their family with what they get. They're real conservation minded, They appreciate being, in a ecosystem and being out in the woods. Sometimes I feel like I'm a little jealous. It's like they're seeing it for the first time, Right. It's an old hat. It's always wonderful, but still, like they're for the first time, they're really into it.
Fresh perspective.
And I just think that's something I've tried to make a conscious effort to do the last couple of years is, bring in some adults who are interested. And I'll be honest, Hal, it's a pain. It's a pain in the butt.
No, I was going to say, I have not done that. And that's simply because I'm selfish of the time. Those 2 or 3 weeks I go to the Bob Marshall or go elk hunting.
Right.
Man, I ain't giving none of it away.
Right. And that's right. I mean, I had that happen for years of people to ask, and I would be like, oh, yeah, sure. And I'd never do anything about it. Mm-hmm. And I started to feel a little guilty about it. And most, we all talk about growing the sport and having people to keep doing it. I was like, well, I have to do something here.
Yeah.
But same thing. I got kids. I got a job. I have only so many weekends to hunt. But I made myself be like, okay, I'm going to set aside this time. I'm going to take these people. And I'll be honest with you, it was a pain, but it was also very rewarding.
I bet it is.
It was very rewarding to teach somebody this and
Did
see
they
them
get
get
a deer?
excited. One guy's got a deer.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
That's powerful stuff.
It
man.
is. It's cool, and it's one of the better things that I've done. Like, both I feel good that I'm doing something good,
Right.
but also it was fun. It was more, it was more fun than I thought.
I mean, it's a cliche, but the hardest things are the most rewarding.
Yeah,
Ain't
right.
No doubt
That's
about
right.
it.
That's right.
It's like, and a lot of them are the things we don't want to do.
Yeah,
and then
that's
you do
right.
them, and you go, damn.
Yeah,
I'm so glad I
I'm
pulled
so
that
glad
off.
I did that. Yeah.
Right. Well, I won't keep you much longer. I know there's lots going on, but what these. And we won't get too deep in this, but you got print media going, you got the web going.
Yep.
I read a story on there recently of Rick Bass's, and one of his deer camp stories from Texas is kind of a multimedia, beautifully illustrated.
Right.
You click through it. I actually think it might outdo print even. The Joe Cermelli's hook shots.
Yeah.
Or my son and I watched that stuff. I mean, it's a blast.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you enjoy that.
So, what do you think? The future is print. Print stays on as the mainstay, and then the web builds to wherever we can. Or
yeah, I mean, I wish I knew all the answers to that too.
Nobody does.
I mean, the media business has changed so much in the last 10 years, but just like a lot of businesses, I mean that little device everybody carries around in their pocket these days, the smartphone, has changed everything from banking to TV to and print's no different, obviously, right? But what I think is exciting about it is we're reaching a lot of people. More people than we ever have, to be honest with you. But we have that much more power. I mean, the print magazine, I still love the print magazine. I think there's something great about reading it and the design and the photographs. I think it's technology that works, frankly. You carry it around, you stick it in a bag, you can leave it somewhere. I like print, and we still have a lot of people who love print. So, I hope that maintains and continues. But there's no doubt that there's, the growth area, all these huge new things is in digital.
Right.
So, fieldstream.com, we have a lot of monthly visitors, and we do lots of great stories there, as you said, a lot of video. Probably the biggest change in the last year or two is how much we interact with our audience through social media. There's a lot of people who don't read the magazine, don't read our website, really just get us on Facebook or Instagram, right? We do a lot of content on Facebook that's just posted on Facebook.
They call me terrible names, by the way, when I write conservation pieces.
Yeah, well, I don't read the comments on those.
I read them diligently. One time, I think it was Mike Toth told me, he goes, "That's your most loyal reader." I had been called every name in the book by then,
Hey, listen, people like to comment and complain. But, we do a lot of stories on Facebook and videos, and it's exciting because it's just another way to reach people. So for me, there's more to do. It's a busier job, but it's kind of exciting that we could do video, we could do things on social media through Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, where we do things on the site, and we still make a great print magazine, and we do books, Right. So it's great to do that. But, some of our videos on Facebook, we're reaching millions of people. It's just a lot of, you make something cool, it gets in front of a lot of people, it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of, great tips and storytelling and skills that we could do through video that we've done really well.
I just watched the Dakota fire hole.
Oh,
you dig that? Did you see that? Yeah, where you dig the hole to feed your fire. And
exactly.
I've never done that, and I was all over that.
Yeah.
I still have the same joy and all that I had as a 10-year-old reading that. And I don't spend as much time reading it, but I have the same joy I had. I was looking at that, and I had to go try it.
Yeah, that's true.
So, well, this has been great, man.
Yeah, Hal, it's been a real pleasure. I've enjoyed it. It's great to be here in Montana and with all these people.
Yeah,
fighting the good fight, talking about hunting. I got to get on I got to get out and fish a couple days. That was pretty good.
Right, I was gonna before we quit. I was just gonna. I know you hit Rock Creek and hit Browns Lake up there.
Yeah, we did. Yep, and I hit the Blackfoot too. And
hit the Blackfoot, right?
Yep.
On.
So it was good.
What was your weather like in that?
It was kind of overcast and cool. So conditions were actually really good.
Were there bugs on the water at all?
Saw a couple of stoneflies.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a beautiful time of year here. I mean,
it is.
It's like everything changes. It's like the most fickle weather on earth.
Right.
I left here with no jacket, and I was over there at that cookout looking for y'all. and I was just like freezing.
Yeah, it got cold. It got cold.
So, well, let's go get to it. I appreciate it, man.
All right, Hal. It was a
thoroughly
pleasure.
enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.